This is a code walkthrough for the example file ComparingObjects.java, and I'm going to do something a little different for this one. I think this one merits having some visuals to go along with it to more clearly explain what's going on. In this example, we're setting up several different CS12 date objects, and then we're comparing them in different ways using the equality operator and then also the equals method of the CS12 date class. And these pictures here on the side depict what's going on in memory. So as always, let's compile this and we'll run it once just to make sure that it runs. So let's clear that and let's set a breakpoint on main and start single stepping our way through this. So here we're setting up a couple of different CS12 data objects, 4 of them, and notice something here. When we set up one of these objects, there's an object designator of some kind which means something to JGrasp. And quite frankly, I'm not quite sure what exactly it means, but this is like a unique object identifier. So we've created this CS12 date object D1 with these parameters 410-2006. And then we'll set a second one, D2, which will be this one right here, at a different place in memory. And notice that these have distinct object designators, so these are in fact separate objects. Now watch what happens when we set up this next one. We're equating D3 equal to the existing D1. And notice that when we do that, we're effectively doing this. We're saying D3 also points to the same memory location as does D1, which is what we see here in the debugger off to the side. This is object 497. But hey, this is object 497 also. So these are the same object as we see over here. Now let's set up this fourth object, D4, and it's going to be over here at another place in memory with a different date. So let's try to compare these and see if we can make sense out of all these results. If we compare D1 and D2 using an equal operator, we're going to find that this is false. But this doesn't quite make sense to us because intuitively we'd think that these should be the same because they contain the same date content, but in fact what we're comparing here is the object references. D1 and D2 point to separate places in memory, so these are in fact different, and so this result is false. D1 and D3, however, are both pointing to the same place in memory, so this result is true. And that's a little bit deceptive because we might think it's because of the content of the object, but all it's saying is that D1 and D3 are pointing to the same place in memory. And again, D1 and D4 are completely different places in memory and different data, so that's no surprise that those are false. So continuing on though, if we compare D1 and D2 instead using the equals method, now we're comparing the content. And in this case, these two should be equal because month, day, and the year of this one are equal to month, day, and the year of this one. So this result will be true as we really expect. D1 and D3 will again be true, but now we're actually comparing the content of each of these objects, which is synonymous for these two, so that's no surprise that this one is true. And then finally, of course, D1 and D4 is going to be false because this date is clearly different from this date. So a couple things to take away from this. Number one, when we do these kind of comparisons with an equality operator, all we're doing is comparing memory locations, not the content of what's at that memory location. If we really want to correctly compare two objects, we should use its equals method as shown here. And just as an aside, the debugger is once again a very useful tool for looking at objects as we create them and manipulate them in JGrasp, because by clicking on this sort of expand icon, we can tunnel down and see all the instance data. Remember that an object is an instance of a class, and it contains its own unique values of all of the instance variables. And we can see that even though all of these are 4 distinct objects, They all have a month, day, year, month, day, year, month, day, year, month, day, year, but they all have specific values particular to each of the objects. So again, the debugger can be a nice tool when you're developing or running or learning how to interpret a piece of software. Okay, so that's it for this example.